Football has one more game left to its season as they prepare for Missouri in the Gator Bowl. Meanwhile, they secured a few signatures for the 2026 class, a new commit in 2027, and they'll be starting to hit the portal come January. So a lot of recruiting to talk about too on this episode. We'll talk the football game against Missouri and recruiting, all coming up on this episode of the Good Ole Podcast. Hi, and welcome to a new episode of the Good Ole Podcast. I'm Jacquie Franciulli for Wahoo's 24/7. I hope everyone's having a good week leading up to Christmas and the holidays. I hope everyone's got their presents all lined up and it's less chaotic leading up to the big day. Well, we were meant to have a show a little earlier. I was planning to have one after the Duke game, coming back from the AC championship game, but I came home to a house quite sick. My husband had a acute bronchitis, so I was unable to do a podcast. And last week, I took some time off since I will be out of town this week for Christmas, since I'll be in Jacksonville. So last week, I took some days off to enjoy some time with my family. So we are having a dual podcast today where we're talking a little bit about recruiting in the first half of the show. And then in the second half of the show, I will have Missouri writer from 24/7 Sports, Cody Goodwin, will join us to talk a little bit about Missouri and that Gator Bowl matchup. And then when we come back from the Gator Bowl, I'll have more, instead of just discussing the Duke game and what went wrong there, I'm going to have a comprehensive look at the entire season. And that will be an episode that will come after the Gator Bowl. And then obviously with the portal heating up, I'm not sure how the schedule will look like for when the next podcast will come after that. It'll just be how the information flow will look like in January. Obviously, it's a very condensed transfer portal window. A lot of the information will be on Wahoo's 24/7, and I'll post all that stuff, including who Virginia is talking to, what's going on, who's visiting, who's kind of in the person of interest. All that will be Wahoo's 24/7. Information changes so much when it comes to the portal. So that will be most likely where I will be focused a lot of my attention. But before we get going on this week's episodes, why don't you go ahead and like this video and click on the bell so that you're notified, if I could speak, if you're notified whenever you have a new episode here. And then head over to wherever you listen to your podcast and leave us a 5-star review so we can continue to grow the show. So like I said, we're going to start a little bit of recruiting, because at this point of the year, it's very different. With I know there's still a football game to go, and it's very important to have this football game for Virginia to get that 11th win for the first time in program history, and on a high note to get more momentum heading into the offseason. But this is also a time period where Virginia is looking at their next season's roster. So they're putting everything together. So that is a very crucial part. So that's why we're going to start off the show with recruiting. And the first thing I want to do is, because we didn't actually have an opportunity to discuss the signing day class, the 2026 class, because the signing day came at the Wednesday before the ACC championship game. And obviously that was a lot of stuff happening with Virginia picking up a commitment, 2027 commitment to Marcus Brown committing on Thursday, then Friday, me being in Charlotte, and obviously the game on Saturday. So a lot of things happened. So we never really discussed this Sunday class, which is a lot smaller than what a normal high school class, and that's something that Virginia, Tony Elliott and Justin Spiros, who we talked to on Monday, him and Tyler Jones were available, that things have been shifting a little bit in the college football landscape. So right now, Virginia is focused on retaining players, some of the guys that are veterans, the guys that have produced well, that are young players that maybe other schools would like to poach. And then also, your recruiting is a little different. Tony Elliott touched about it on National Signing Day. Said before, you probably wanted to focus more on your high school developmental program. And he doesn't want to stray too far away from that. But at the same time, you're probably going to see more of a 50-50, 60-40 split when it comes to that. You still want to recruit your high school guys, because at the end of the day, if you see Miami and how they beat Texas A&M, you point out freshmen, right? You point out freshmen, high school developmental players that made those big plays. So at the end, you still want those guys. I mean, on a national stage, those guys came up big for one of the ACC teams. But you are getting to those positions also because of those transfer portal guys. Virginia, if you look through this roster this year, you had a few guys that came from high school. Obviously, Cam Robinson, you got Jason Hammond, Anthony Britton. You have a couple of those guys, and Antonio Clary, Noah Josie. And there's a lot of guys that came from the high school ranks, but you also have the guys like Mitchell Melton, Chandler Morris, Jamari Taylor, Harrison Whaley, Brady Wilson, Drake Metcalf. All those guys that came from the portal and reinforced that depth chart, reinforced that roster, reinforced that starting offense and starting defense. So that's where you're going to see Virginia kind of play around with having that 50-50 split, 60-40 sometimes. It kind of depends on who's going, who's leaving, and you kind of see every year they might change a little bit, but you're seeing a smaller class because of that this year. So I did a quick superlatives story once the signing class came out because there's some really intriguing athletes here. Derek Uran, a linebacker out of Ohio, he was up to a 4-star on the latest 24/7 rankings just before signing day. And he was committed to Cincinnati, so I had him as the biggest flip in this class, and he's a very good player. He was named Defensive Player of the Year, All-District Defensive Player of the Year, selected first team All-GSL, All-District in 2025. He had 105 tackles, 23.5 for loss, 9.5 sacks during his senior year. He was a big part of his team making it far in the postseason, but he also is successful in the track and field. He set school records in both the 100-meter hurdle and the Panthers 4x100 relay. He was your regional and district champion in 100-meter hurdle. So this is a guy that is very athletic. And when you look at what Virginia likes at that linebacker position, you see what you mean when you look at Derek Uran. And even Tony Elliott said on National Signing Day that he is just a football player. That's who they've been gravitating toward, those guys that eat, drink, sleep football, and that's what he has. He's also a very violent player. He's got a really good skill set to either play linebacker or field safety. So it's a very versatile guy on defense. So that you have to start with Derek Uran when you look at this class. And that's why I call them the biggest flip. Virginia picked up a few receivers in this class. Obviously, Dylan Cope is someone that we noted in our superlatives class of the biggest pull. He's coming from a very talented group in Alabama. He had 132 receptions for under 2,000 yards, 17 touchdown receptions in his last 3 years with the Huskies. He picked up 51 passes for 905 yards this season with 9 touchdowns coming this fall. So this is a very big year for him. So he's the type of guy that you can kind of see potentially coming in and I don't know, sure, factor in because Virginia's wide receiver room is pretty young too, but he's certainly someone who, because he's coming in the spring, can certainly participate and have additional reps in that spring. The guy that I'm really interested in seeing is Jaden Colville. He's a cornerback out of Oscar Smith. He's a guy that you can kind of circle as a possible instant impact guy. You can see how Virginia has had some very successful freshmen coming in early. Dre Walker prior to going to the portal before his injuries. Ethan Minter obviously is a guy that we've seen his contribution at safety. Corey Cosner this year as well at that nickel position. He was earning more play time over the last few games and had some very big interceptions, including one in an ACC championship game. So Virginia's had a good track record with some of these freshman DBs coming in and contributing early. And Jaden Colville is a really good one. He's a ball hawk for his high school team. He was named 6A All-Region First Team at DB. He was also First Team All-State. He has a very specific skill set that I don't think Virginia has recruited often at the corner position. He is a true corner. He's very physical, and I really am excited to see how Keys will compete in the spring. He's also an early enrollee, so that'll be definitely one to watch there. The sleeper in my class is actually another DB, is Alex Dunn. Jaden Colville received a lot of accolades, so people know of him. Alex Dunn was someone that Virginia recruited from in-state. They found him in the spring, I believe it was May. He visited, he committed pretty much all within like a week. Other schools started interest, but he was dead set on going to Virginia, and he continued to get other people come in and notice him. He's a very versatile athlete. And I think once he gets into Virginia's weight room and with their nutrition and their training, I think you're gonna see a really good future of him. So Alex Dunn is my sleeper. I don't expect him to come in and be an instant impact guy, but I do expect him to be a very good player down the way. So that's someone to know in the future for Virginia. So that was a really I thought it was a very good win. I think the most potential, there's 2 guys that I would circle on that. I think Jayon Williams, he is a quarterback out of St. Francis Academy. Virginia is giving him an opportunity to compete at quarterback, although they do see his potential at running back, and when I list him in the eligibility charts right now, I do have him at running back just because that's where I think he will fit eventually. He will try to compete at quarterback first, and if he gets that job, then that's it. But I mean, I think his potential in college football is going to be at running back. And if you see his tape, you can see why, man. He's a dynamic athlete and he's a really good runner. And you can see that when you watch his tape. I think the other guy that I would put this category is Eli Hamrick. He's a quarterback that because he had some issues off the field, and when I say issues, I mean a hurricane come through his hometown and having to be forced to transfer his junior year because his high school was, damaged from a hurricane and he had to move because his house was also in the middle of that path. He moved and then his junior season was a little bit derailed. He went from a potential starting role to now playing behind someone, learning a new offense, all very, very quickly. So his junior year, where you expect him to get more recognition, more, I mean, moving up his rankings a little bit more. You didn't have that. However, this senior season, he did get noticed a little bit and he showed a little bit more what he can do. And I mean, he led his team all the way to the state championship. So if you noticed when you look through this class, you notice a theme when I keep saying they went to the postseason. They went to the postseason. They were first team all state. They won the state title. That's what you kind of see from this class. Is a lot of these guys have been to the championships and even asked Tony Elliott, "Is that something that they purposely recruit?" And he says, "Yes, because when you're in the locker room with guys who have been there before, you don't have to teach them how to win. It's already ingrained in them, and that's hard to teach if you haven't been part of that. Obviously, you're not gonna get all of them who are state title winners, but if you got enough of them in your locker room, that does make a difference." And even when he was recruiting in the portal, you see the Mitchell Miltons and the, Jaden Thomas, guys who's been a national title either there or in their previous stop. I mean, you can see even their high school recruiting previous in this class, Jason Hammond coming from a St. Thomas Aquinas. So that this is kind of what they've been recruiting, kind of working towards. I think 2 fan favorites, and honestly, the steal of the class is included here, is the Varina teammates of Damari Carter and Ja'Shawn Richardson, or Bull Richardson. I think those are the 2 that I think fans are gonna like, not only because they're from the Richmond area, so they're close by, but I think just having those 2 be very big supportive of the Virginia program. I mean, I think Bull Richardson came to most of home games. If he could, he was there on the sidelines cheering for Virginia this season after he committed. He was a UVA fan prior to committing, and obviously is a UVA fan now as a part of the class. And I think Damari Carter is one where I think he was the steal of the class because I think he's probably should be ranked a little bit higher than he was, but it was a steal because I remember his recruitment and I thought he was going to Maryland. So I had written him off, and then he said he was visiting Virginia. Virginia wasn't meant to get a visit. When Virginia recruited him, they were there, but Damari was about to cancel that visit when Bull and his coach Marcus Lewis said, "Hey, why don't you take a visit to Virginia?" Then Virginia did a great job on the visit, and then Damari ended up committing to them in July. Was it July? Yes, it was July. It was in the summer. It's been a while. But I still remember that conversation with him, how much that visit and Coach Mims helped him kind of flip his mind on Virginia. So I feel like that is the steal of the class for UVA just because of how that recruiting kind of turned out the way they did it. So Virginia has enough good talent in this class. I know people are focusing on the rankings, but because of the way Virginia is going to plan on kind of pursuing how they're going to handle recruiting, you're going to see less focus on high school numbers and you're going to see a little bit more on portal. You're going to see that 50-50 split with Virginia and possibly 60-40 on some days. And I didn't touch on a lot of the other players there. I mean, Dylan Beal has been committed for a long time. I believe he was the second commitment. No, Eli Hamrick was the first, and he was the first to bring in his national letter of intent too as LOI. Um, Jack Rose is a good wide receiver. He was getting some interest from Georgia Tech and Georgia down the stretch there. Uh, from someone who's close to the program, they said he kind of reminds them of Eli Woodish, and we've seen what Eli Wood was able to do this season for UVI, kind of the glue of the locker room. They also have Michael Gildea from the Hun School, which is a good program. They also have Dallas Brannon, a linebacker out of a good program at Independence High School in Charlotte, North Carolina. Isaiah Harris was a late addition. He transferred from Ongaro High School to Thomas Jefferson High School, and he is being recruited at DB. And then Luke Hatfield was one of the last commitments for Virginia. He's coming from Battlefield High School in Haymarket, Virginia, and he's an inside defensive lineman. So he's another late addition for Virginia. He was, I believe, he committed either that Monday or Tuesday, right before National Signing Day. So yeah, so Virginia, a lot of emphasis in state. They expand a little bit their footprint. They've been focusing a lot in that Richmond area, which has been beneficial through Downing and Coach Downing and Dave Gaither. And then they've also expanded a little bit to include some of the Southwest Virginia, but also Nova, kind of that 5-hour radius, kind of getting the Baltimore area as well. And then obviously the 757, which lets me to talk to about the 757 recruiting that they've been doing in the 2027 class. They already have 5 commits, and that's been a very strong start to the class. When we're talking about how you might focus on the recruiting section on 2026 and feel like you've been let down from the season, we got to remember you're not going to see a recruiting bump from this season in 2026. All those were kind of settled. I mean, you're done with 2026 by the time this season was done. Virginia picked up 2 guys, but it was done. Like all the stuff was pretty much organized. They were trying to get some flip guys towards the end, but at that point they were tight on space because they knew how many guys in the portal. So even some guys that were interested in coming to Virginia, Virginia could not take at that point. So Virginia had only maybe a handful of guys. I would even say 3 or 4 guys that were very big flip candidates that Virginia would take. Other guys that they were keeping an eye on to see what's going on, but they also had an idea that they would probably get a better experience fit in the portal. So Virginia was juggling a little bit the numbers there as well as the season was dripping to a close. So all the momentum from recruiting from the last season will be in the 2027 class. So you'll have DeMarcus Brown, Sean Curry, Derek Finisher, Lonnie Andrews, and Gene Jones. That class right now, that's a very good class for 2027, just to start off. When you look at it, you have 4 out of the 5 committed are Virginia natives, and you have 3 of them coming from the 757 and 1 coming from Roanoke. So that's a good start to that class. DeMarcus Brown, obviously a very good win for Virginia there, committing the Thursday before the ACC championship. He did pick up a Virginia Tech offer, I believe last week from James Franklin, but right now he is solid to Virginia at this time. So, but yeah, very good start to class. Sean Curry is also a very good, intriguing tight end athlete. He committed to both Virginia men's lacrosse and Virginia football, and both programs are talking to see how he can navigate that. And obviously, Virginia has recruited a couple lacrosse players to play. Billy Kadelka is obviously one at defensive end right now. And Sean said that he has talked to Billy a little bit about that transition between lacrosse and football. So 2027 class starting off right. So we're going to take a quick look. So again, we're going to do 2 episodes coming up on after this, after the bowl. We're doing a overview of the season and then a portal palooza, I guess, quick episode. And I'm going to be inviting like one of our national guys probably will come over here to talk a little bit about what the difference is in this transfer portal season. But what's intriguing here is how things are still up in the air for Virginia. That's why it's kind of hard to discuss the portal. And even, general manager Tyler Jones and assistant general manager and chief of staff Justin Spiros on Monday was discussing that although, I mean, they've been evaluating rosters since the summer. I mean, this is not something just turn on when a guy comes into the portal. This is something they've been continuously doing. That's what all programs are doing now. You're constantly evaluating players if they enter the portal. You're also retaining your players because if you look at the eligibility chart that I posted on Wahoo's 24/7, several guys have extra years of eligibility. You're looking at Chandler Morris, who submitted a waiver. He submitted a waiver back in October. They're still waiting word. They submitted extra paperwork. They're still trying to see where things are. If he gets a new extra year, they're likely not going to add another quarterback because then they'll have a good spread of um, balanced classes with Daniel Kalen having an extra year to get used to the system. And then you have your Kogier and Bjorn Jurgensen, and then you have your Eli Hamrick. So then you have your transition, right? You have your succession plan in place. So that's most likely will change your quarterback. In your running back room, you're gonna expect Virginia to get 1 or 2, most likely 2 running backs, just because you're gonna leave Jamari Taylor, Harrison Wiley. Those guys only had 1 year of eligibility. There's no magical waiver for both of those guys, and you're left with Xavier Brown and Noah Vaughn as your experienced players, and then you have Zay Davis as a freshman because he burned his red shirt, or he has a no, he has a red shirt. So Zay Davis, and then you also have Jayon Williams if he'll start at quarterback and then transition to running back if he doesn't move forward in the quarterback room. So you're gonna want to have experienced running backs there just because Xavier Brown has been hurt. So you want someone that can help distribute the running back reps, and also Noah Vaughn as well. In the wide receiver room, I still expect attrition right now. So Harrison has entered the portal, and he is no longer going to be part of the program. I know people can come back in, but that's something that I don't expect him to come back. So you have him, and I still believe there's going to be some more attrition in that room. Whenever they announce it, that'll happen. So with that the case, then I would expect Virginia maybe to get 1, maybe 2 guys. I think their slot position is in a good way right now because 'cause you've got Cam Courtney, who's obviously was their number 2, but you also got that redshirt freshman and Josiah Abdullah. And then when Xavier Brown is healthy, you can slot him there as well. The tight end room is kinda like the running back room. I feel that's where they're gonna add more depth, maybe 1 or 2 guys there because Dakota Tweedy, when he was down, you saw the difference in that offense. And John Rogers, you can see how much he's improved since that first year he was on grounds, and you saw how much he has improved and showed his ability as a pass catching tight end. I don't see him as a H-back guy. Kinda him and Dakota Tweedy probably share some of the tendencies together, but Dakota Tweedy took a while to get comfortable to that position where he was really comfortable in the blocking area, and you could see what happened when him and Sage Ennis were on the field together, and they were able to do a lot more on the offense. This offense is really focused on 12 personnel sets, and I think once Dakota Tweedy went out, a few things were changed on that offense, and we saw that especially following up with Xavier Brown being out. A lot of things switched pretty quickly there, so I imagine Virginia will look to add to that tight end room. I mean, the offensive line room, though, is up in the air. I mean, there's a lot of questions. I mean, if you look at the eligibility chart that I have available on Wahoo's 24/7, there are a lot of asterisks there. A lot of guys are gonna be making a decision, so that's something that we are gonna keep an eye on for the entire offensive line. I think the only one that ran out of eligibility is Brady Wilson. Everyone else has an opportunity to return if they want to, either through a medical waiver or an other waiver through the NCAA. So that is something that we are gonna be watching the next few weeks. Obviously, retention is key, and there's still negotiations going on. Even guys, I mean, it's not over yet for some of the guys that you might think it's over with. So I think it's still, up in the air there. At defensive line, Jacob Holmes obviously is gone. Jameer Carter is obviously gone. Daniel Rickert is obviously gone. So you're looking at Fisher Kemick coming back if he chooses because he has an extra year. Mitchell Melton is another that Virginia is negotiating for possibly returning. And you have younger guys like Anthony Britton and Jason Hammond who still have 2 years left. So the interior is a little better because you have the Brittons, you have the Hammonds, you have the, Hunter Osborns. You also have, like, Sean John, who's been getting a lot of praise from the staff. So the interior defensive line, I think Virginia is okay. The more the stress would be getting more pass rushers, getting another Daniel Rickard in there because he was such a productive member of that defensive front. So getting them, moving Billy Kudelka along as well. But that will be one of the keys for Virginia there. Then when you look at linebacker, obviously retaining Cam Robinson will be a priority. Retaining Maddox Marcellus, retaining Caleb Hardy, retaining Landon Danley. I think that is probably the deepest position on Virginia. I might see Virginia add a linebacker if they find a right fit, but if they keep Cam Robinson and keep those guys there, I think that is one of the positions where you can go like, "Okay, they're in a good spot." And actually that same goes for, Cam Robinson, excuse me, cornerback. I think Virginia has a really good depth at that position because you have Donovan Platt, Jamarck Morris, if he chooses to return, technically he does have an extra year of eligibility. According to a source, he hasn't been around the team, So I'm not sure. And I mean, if you get a medical exemption prior to the year, you don't have to. So I put a double asterisk there because I don't know what that situation is if he's not been around the team. So I don't have the warm and fuzzies there, but it could a possibility that he was just rehabbing somewhere else. So again, Jamark Morris. Then you have Emmanuel Carnley and Jam Jackson, who's coming back from his injury this year. So, and then obviously Corey Cosner, who's did a really good job. Jason Prevard is gone to the portal, and I don't expect them to kind of change that course in that decision. At safety, Ethan Minter, Montino Williams is a freshman that I think could step up next year. So I think safety is where I would look for Virginia to add someone with Devin Neal and Antonio Clary out of eligibility. That is a position that I think Virginia could take advantage in the portal and find some more veteran leadership and veteran talent there, since they're going to be pretty young in that group. Although young with Ethan Minter having 3 years, um, starting or as a projected starter. Lucas Anchor is a name there that could possibly get some reps in. He was someone who traveled with Virginia in most of those games. So again, a lot of question marks still because there's still some decisions to be made. You know, we asked Noah Josie, we asked Eli Wood, and they said that there's still things are up in the air at this time of whether they will come back or not. So a lot of those decisions are going to happen post Gator Bowl. So that's why I'm going to be focusing a lot of my portal coverage after the Gator Bowl, just because a lot of those retention negotiation, although Virginia is doing their pre-portal evaluations and getting kind of moving down some of the list here, I think Virginia has made some moves with some safety targets. Like I said, that's a position that they'll need in some running back targets and some tight end targets because those are positions they will need regardless of what happens in some of those decisions. But I think you're going to see Virginia move forward a little more aggressively once they figured out those other retentions. So that was a very long recruiting breakdown. That was longer than I thought was going to be. I think that's about over 20 minutes of talking about recruiting, but we're gonna do a little more in-depth piece on recruiting. I know this feels like that was a lot, but there's gonna be more about it once we get a good gauge on what the portal is gonna look like for Virginia more after these retention conversations. I feel like some of them will be announced here pretty quickly after the Gator Bowl. So the days after the Gator Bowl, I would keep an eye on Wahoo's 24/7 as some of these things will be revealed. I think there's some good vibes around some players that they might return. I think what will happen with Chandler Morris will also affect that. So again, all that will be coming up after the Gator Bowl. Those are the 2 episodes that I'll be working on, the overview of the season and the overview of the roster coming in. But for now, we're gonna take a quick break. I'm gonna drink some water, and then I'll have Cody Goodwin on the other side here to discuss the big game, because honestly, there's only one more football game, and then we won't have football for months. So let's talk football. So we'll be right back. And welcome back to the Good Ole Podcast. I'm Jacquie Franciulli. I'm joined here by Cody Goodwin. He covers Missouri on the other 24/7 site. Cody, thanks so much for joining us today.
No, I appreciate you guys having me, and here's hoping we get to talk about what we think could potentially be a pretty fun game on Saturday night.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I know, the first half of the show, I discuss a lot of, about the portal and recruiting. So it's nice to have football to also discuss at this point of the year. I know a lot of things have happened around bowls and maybe it's a little lackluster now of college football playoffs, but it's still a game. We still have one more game until we have months without football.
100%. Yeah, it's kind of funny. Missouri very much into like the roster management portion of the calendar, right? With signing day earlier this month, guys opting out because they want to go to the portal, opting out of the bowl game because they're going to the portal. And then obviously with the transfer portal opening literally like a week after this game, just that's kind of where everybody's focus is, right? Because especially with only one portal window open, people kind of forget that like, oh yeah, there's one more game going on, right? And just bowl games kind of maybe taking a back seat to the playoff, and everybody else obviously looking ahead to next year. I'll do the thing where I take over your podcast and ask you a question. What's the vibe on bowl season in Virginia? Like, I know this is the first time in a long time that UVA is bowling. Like, does that make this more special, or have they also been caught up in the whole like we're ready to look ahead type deal?
No, I mean, they're excited. I mean, if you look at this Virginia team, I know they had ACC championship aspirations, and obviously they were so close to college football playoffs, but this is a team that has won 11 games in 3 seasons prior to this, so this is a chance for them to make program history of being the first team ever to win 11 wins. So for UVA, there's still something to fight for. There's still something for this team to earn and add their own legacy to it, and don't forget, this team there's 22 members of this team that was part of that 2022 team that lost their, brothers, they lost their teammates. So they want to leave on a high note. Some of these guys are making decision if they're coming back or if they're not. So this is a very big opportunity. It's a very sentimental too. So there's a lot going on for this Virginia program. So I'm going to throw it back to you. How's the vibe around Missouri? Because I know obviously some of the obviously starting quarterback is not going to be available for Missouri. So how does that affect kind of the vibe in the locker room?
Yeah, I think if you ask like the players and the coaches, like Eli Drinkwitz, head coach, is very much like this is another opportunity. The game of football is never guaranteed, right? Like he does a really good job of getting his guys up and ready to play. You know, similar but kind of different when maybe compared to UVA. Like Mizzou, if they win this, it's their ninth win this season. It's their 30th in the last 3 seasons, which is something they've only ever done as a program once before. This would be their third consecutive bowl victory, which is something the program has never done before, and they like stacking trophies in the South End Zone facility. So, in the same way as UVA, like there are reasons for Missouri to get up for this game. If you ask fans and me, like you probably get a mixed bag, right? Like there's still some fans that like cling to the college football of yesteryear, and they're like, yeah, man, bowl games, like it's going to be a fun one. Like the matchup on paper looks like it could be really cool if both the A teams show up. And then there's others who are like, well, they said they wanted to get to the playoff. They didn't get to the playoff. What are we doing here? Let's just fast forward to the portal, right? It's like there's just some that are just kind of antsy and ready to get to the roster construction of next season because we all know how important that transfer portal window is. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag if you ask those around the program, but those inside the program, like Drinkwitz does a really good job of getting his guys prepared, getting them up. There are some of those micro goals since they weren't able to get to the playoff this year that they're still chasing. So I imagine once the ball is kicked on Saturday, I imagine we'll see a pretty fired up Mizzou team, and I think they'll go out and they'll play hard and they'll play to win the game 100%.
Yeah, I remember hearing Drinkwitz during that Zoom call, the first one when they announced the Gator Bowl was him and Tony Elliott. And obviously, when you think of bowl games and the extra practice, you think of young players. You think of young players getting more reps and maybe possibility playing in a game like this so you can get more experience. And he kind of shut that down immediately. He's like, well, this is not, a trophy, like this is a meaningless trophy. This is a game. We're playing to win here. And he kind of shut that down a little bit. So you can see he's trying to energize his program for this game.
Yeah, and I honestly I appreciated that about both Drinkwitz and Elliott. They're like, hey, like the season didn't necessarily go the way that we wanted it to go, right? Like Mizzou was maybe a couple of plays from winning 10 games, and who knows what that means for the playoff picture if they're able to do that. UVA very, one or two plays away from actually being in the playoff, right? So I'm sure that they kind of want to flush that nasty feeling and end this magical season for them on a high note. So yeah, I mean, there's reasons for this team to get up for this game, and from a fan perspective, and those who are just watching college football on a Saturday night after Christmas, like if you want reasons to be interested in this game, I think there are plenty of reasons to be interested in this game.
One of the interesting storylines, obviously, with Beau Pribula, he's going to the portal. You got Matt Zollers, a true freshman who is expected to start. He did play for Missouri this year. We have seen what the offense might technically look like with him under center. How would you describe him as a quarterback, and how has Missouri adjusted when he was the guy?
Yeah, Matt Zollers he's talented, right? Like he was a four-star guy. He was a top 100 recruit. Drinkwitz has not been shy about calling him the future of the Missouri program. He's also a 19-year-old true freshman, and he played in 7 games this season. He got 2 starts because Bo dislocated his ankle against Vanderbilt in October. So, that kind of thrust Zollers into the QB1 role for a couple weeks. But he's still young. He still needs some reps. He doesn't have that experience that Bo had coming into this season. And so it kind of I think it's going to be a mixed bag. Like I don't really know what to expect on Saturday. Like because you look back at the games that he did play, and it was a little bit of everything, right? Like when he stepped in for Bo after he got hurt against Vanderbilt, he was very much operating, I think, within the offense and the game plan that Mizzou's staff had designed for Bo. And he looked pretty good doing it, right? Like 13 of 24, threw for 138 yards, generally looked calm and in control. And like he was standing in the pocket. He's a little bit different quarterback than Bo, but he was standing in the pocket. He was firing passes. He just looked comfortable. And we're like, okay, like I see what Drinkwitz sees in there. And then you fast forward a couple weeks against Texas A&M, and the game plan changed like almost to, like a night and day effect, right? Like they were leaning into his arm strength a little bit and just trying to chuck the ball down the field. And, obviously Texas A&M different than Vanderbilt. He struggled quite a bit in that game. 7 of 22, less than 100 yards passing. It was kind of a rough performance. He looked like a 19-year-old true freshman, right? Come back the next week against Mississippi State. Ahmad Hardy ran for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. So Zollers didn't really need to do a whole lot that night. And so I'm kind of curious to see like what the game plan is going to be going into this Gator Bowl. Like Virginia's got a really tough defense, right? Good rush defense. So they're probably going to lean on Ahmad Hardy, but you're going to have to like throw some curveballs a little bit if you want to open up some holes for Hardy. So what does that mean for Zollers? I'm not sure. Like I've always kind of believed that a mix of trying to chuck it deep, but also some of the more conservative play calling, we'll call it with Bo at quarterback. I always felt like a mix would work out really well for Zollers, is just kind of a younger guy who just needs to maybe ease his way into football games before he can really let it rip. I don't know if that's what they're going to do on Saturday. Like I literally have no clue what kind of offense they're going to roll out there. I know with Ahmad Hardy still chasing Missouri's single season rushing record, they're probably going to lean on that quite a bit. But what it means for Zollers in the quarterback situation and how the offense overall is gonna function, we're all going to find out together on Saturday night. Which I think it'll be that's one of the intriguing like little subplots that I'll be paying attention to.
How much does Hardy need?
So hard it depends on which Mizzou fans you ask. So the single season rushing record was set by Cody Schrader a couple years ago. But the real ones, the real Mizzou fans know that actually Devin West back in 1998 hit 1703, so 1,703 rushing yards. But back in 98, bowl game statistics for whatever reason didn't count. So he doesn't have like the official single season record. So I think he only needs about 68 yards to catch Schrader, but he needs about 104 or so to catch Devin West's single season record. So that's really kind of one of the big storylines that we're following on Saturday night. Just can Hardy get the single season record, and who's going to recognize him either passing Schrader or him passing Devin West? We'll see.
Tony Elliott, during his Zoom call, didn't get any questions about Hardy, but he unprompted talked about Hardy, and he called him one of the best running backs he has seen. That's a lot for a coach who was a running backs coach at some point in his career and obviously coached the Clemson offenses to national titles. What makes Hardy Hardy? What makes him so special?
Yeah, I think what makes Ahmad Hardy and really this Mizzou run game so special is I think it's kind of the perfect marriage between system and athlete, right? Because Mizzou runs that outside zone run scheme. They like to get their offensive linemen on the move. They kind of like to create that wall as they run toward the sidelines. And that allows the running backs to either be patient and follow that wall all the way around the outside, or if they find a gap that they like, they're able to kind of plant their foot and go straight north and south, right? And so now you take that system and you bring in Ahmad Hardy, who is a bowling ball at 5'10", 210 pounds. He continually churns his feet. He has a low center of gravity, so it's really hard, like physically or physiologically, to wrap him up and bring him down on first contact. And he just constantly keeps his legs churning. Like Drinkwitz has called him a Clydesdale among Phillies this season. And so you pair those two things together, right? This fantastic athlete that's hard to bring down, and a system that tends to get the most out of really good running backs. And you have this special season from Ahmad Hardy, right? More than 1,500 rushing yards, 16 rushing touchdowns. He was a Doak Walker Award finalist, consensus All American. He led the nation in yards after contact, more than 1,100 yards after contact. I think he broke 85 tackles if we're using PFF's numbers. Like he's a dude that is just he's really special, and it's been really fun to kind of see him shine in a system that has routinely helped running backs jump from lower levels to the SEC level and have done really really well. Thinking like Tyler Beatty, thinking Cody Schrader, Marcus Carroll, Nate Noel, those guys. Like Mizzou has had a lot of success running the ball under Drinkwitz because of that outside zone, and now you're bringing in just this fantastic athlete, and it's one of the best rushing attacks in the country. I think the other thing too, the things that stats and numbers can't measure is just, this Ahmad Hardy's a dude that's just got a chip on his shoulder, right? He came from real small town, Oma, Mississippi, only had one Division I football offer out of high school, went to Louisiana Monroe, ran for 1,300 yards. And even before then, like the coaches didn't necessarily think that he was going to start right away. So he had to earn the starting role. And then he became a superstar, hit the transfer portal, one of those transfer portal success stories where he goes from small school to big school. And so, he runs, I don't want to say he runs angry, but he runs motivated. Like this is a guy that still constantly feels like he has something he has to prove. And Mizzou has obviously been the beneficiary of that. He's hit 100 yards in 8 of 12 games this season, multiple rushing touchdowns in 4 of 12 games this season. He ran for 300 yards against Mississippi State, ran for 250 against Louisiana earlier this year. So this is, I would say it's right player in the right system. But then also like this is a guy that constantly feels like he has something to prove every single time he touches the ball.
It's safe to say that for Virginia to win, they need to stop the run. That's gonna be the key for them without starting linebacker Cam Robinson, who tore his ACL in the first game against Duke this season. So that's a tough loss for Virginia when you're thinking about a rush matchup, when you look at what Duke was able to do in the ACC title game and even earlier in the year, what NC State was able to do on the ground. So obviously that's gonna be a key matchup there. But on the flip side, Virginia is also gonna wanna run the ball and give Chandler Morris opportunities to pass the ball because you want that balance. That's the way Virginia's offense works. They needs to have a balanced performance to really get Chandler Morris going, get him comfortable, to give him a time for plays to develop. And when I look at the defensive line, I think Tony Elliott said it best. Those are big men in the trenches for Missouri. Tony Elliott said when they kind of put their offensive line together, even the guys in the trenches, you structure the D line and O line differently for the ACC than you do for the SEC, and they're going to face some SEC big boys. What has stood out about this defensive line and just about this defensive front?
Yeah, I mean, just Missouri's defense as a whole, just not a lot of glaring weaknesses, right? Like when you think about like what successful defenses has done, and UVA's got one from this past season, right? Really good on the defensive side of the ball. They're able to get after the quarterback, whether it's off the edge with Zion Young and Damon Wilson, whether it's pressure up the middle with big guys like Chris McClellan and Sterling Webb. They're able to send some exotic blitzes, but they're also able to get home by only rushing 3 or 4 guys at a time, just because they're really talented up front. They're also able to stop the run. Chris McClellan, who's been an excellent pass rusher up the middle, is also just kind of a brick wall in the middle of that defense. And then they've got linebackers behind him, Josiah Trotter, who actually won't be playing in this game. He's an all SEC linebacker. He had a small injury in the season finale against Arkansas, so he won't be there, but they've got really good depth at linebacker. They've got Tristan Newsome. They've got Khalil Jacob. They've got Nick Rodriguez, a younger guy who just flies around and plays with his hair on fire. And sometimes that gets him in trouble. Most times it turns into pretty fun plays. So they have a really good deep linebacking core behind that defensive line that just cleans up whatever mess comes through. And that forces a lot of teams into second and third and longs. And now you have to throw against a secondary that, they're just really sticky in man coverage. They challenge the ball. They occasionally give up some big plays, but they just make it really hard for quarterbacks to maybe find some of those, easy access passing lanes. And so this is a Missouri defense that I've not been shied about calling one of the best in the country this season. The Missouri defense, I think the best compliment we've been able to give the Missouri defense this season, they have played well enough for Missouri to win all 12 games this season. The offense in 4 of those games did not hold up their end of the bargain. But this defense, just as long as all the A guys are in line and they play really well, they're really hard to move the ball against. And I think a subplot to Trotter maybe not playing in this game is he did not play the majority of the Mississippi State game because he actually got called for targeting in the first half of that game. And so that forced those linebackers, a lot of depth at that linebacker position. But when you don't have your routine green dot on the field and your all SEC linebacker on the field, maybe not everybody is in position as frequently as they might be with Trotter on the field. So Mississippi State was able to find some holes in the defense. They were able to run the ball a little bit. They run kind of that veer and shoot. So, they were able to find ways to move the ball. And I wonder with Trotter not being there and, what does that mean for Virginia? I know Chandler Morris is a guy that has a little bit of mobility, but likes to sit in the pocket and throw the ball a little bit. Jamari Taylor obviously has been a fantastic story, not unlike Ahmad Hardy, right? Coming up from a smaller school to, being a first team all ACC running back. I know they like to run the ball there. So, are they able to get those linebackers in conflict a little bit to find some success running the ball, to set up Morris to throw the ball a little bit? So I think Trotter not being there is an underrated storyline, but I think it's one that, Virginia might take advantage of just because we've seen what this Missouri defense can do with Trotter and without Trotter. And it's, one of the best defenses in the country when he's on the field, maybe not as much when he's not on the field. And so Missouri not having him, that could obviously benefit Virginia pretty well.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned Trotter's not going to be available for the game. Obviously, we know that it's the backup quarterback as well under center. Just as a kind of overall, who will not be available for Missouri in this game? And are you still waiting for any decisions?
Yeah, I think we know of 11 players total. Two of them are injured. Josiah Trotter, we obviously mentioned, and then starting tight end Brett Norfleet, who's a really big body at 6'6", 260 pounds. He leads Missouri with touchdown receptions this season. Real big body in the red zone, obviously, but then also he's got some after the catch ability. He was kind of dealing with a shoulder thing, and so they shut him down after the season finale. So Trotter and Norfleet, those are the two big names that won't be there injury wise. And then Missouri also lost 9 guys to the portal. Obviously, Bo Prabula is the big one at quarterback, but they also lost some depth at running back. A couple of freshmen entered the portal. So, if Hardy gets that record, I think, Drinkwitz would have liked to have seen some of those younger guys get some run, but now that may not be the case. And then the other two, I think that were, maybe noteworthy in terms of, players that Virginia needs to know. Two receivers, Josh Manning and Marquise Johnson, they've combined for 57 catches, almost 700 yards, and 4 total touchdown receptions. Those guys have entered the portal and they won't be with Missouri at the bowl game. So 11 total players, but really only about 5 or 6 that I think Virginia fans need to know.
Perfect. And a final, I'm not going to ask you for a prediction because there's still some things up in the air for, both teams. I think Virginia's still working out a few things for their injured players. But what are the keys for Missouri? What does Missouri need to do to secure the win?
Yeah, I think offensively with Zollers at quarterback, I mean, obviously they'd like to kind of experiment a little bit, and maybe we personally kind of want to just see, hey, like what kind of offense you're going to set up for this guy with a few weeks off. But Missouri's offense, it always comes back to establishing the Hardy, right? Like they got to just run the ball. We know Drinkwitz is probably going to spam the Hardy button to one, maybe try and get him the single season record, but also just kind of his thought on bowl games and how, the game of football is never guaranteed. He's going to want to get, the guys that got Missouri to this point, he's going to want to reward those guys with, some extra touches and more playing time. So I think Missouri is going to come out and they're going to try and run the ball. It'll be a challenge, right? Because Virginia's rush defense, top 25 nationally. They barely, I think, 110 rushing yards per game on average that they allow. So that'll be a fun challenge, right? Hardy versus UVA's run defense, ACC D line against SEC O line. What's that going to look like? That'll be kind of a fun little subplot to monitor as well. And then defense, like I think Missouri's defense just kind of needs to show up and do their thing. I think Virginia is going to present some different challenges that maybe they haven't seen before. Talked about Jamari Taylor. We talked about Chandler Morris. I think as long as Missouri's defense shows up and do their thing, that they're going to give the team a chance to win the game. I think they've been that good all season long. And, I think that with one more opportunity to go out and play again, I think they're going to want to continue to put good things on tape. So I think that's really the key, is just kind of show up and continue to do what you've been doing really well all season.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's like we said on top of the show. There's only one more football game for these 2 teams, and then there's months without football. We're just gonna be talking about football, not watching football. So everyone should just enjoy the next few days here and obviously enjoy the game on Saturday. Well, Cody, thanks so much for coming on the show and breaking down the game with me.
Yeah, appreciate you having me, and we'll see you down in Jacksonville.
Thanks again, Cody, for joining us on a show. It's always nice to have the other team's perspective here, and especially considering that Virginia and Missouri haven't faced each other since the 1970s. It's nice to figure out what Missouri has. And, obviously facing a foe that's in the other conference, we not following them as closely as maybe, obviously a Miami or a Duke or a SMU. So it's good to feel a little bit more of the opponents by having them come on the show. So I appreciate it. He also did a behind the many lines for us on Wahoo's 24/7 too. If you like to read it rather than listen to it, there's also that as well on our site. So that's it for us this week. I will be in Jacksonville for the game. I'll have some pregame coverage as well. I'll be getting there on Christmas Day, so that we'll have full game pregame coverage and postgame coverage. And of course, starting on January 2nd, the portal is open. So we'll have all that information on Wahoo's 24/7. We are running a 50% off sale going on Wahoo's 24/7 if you choose to subscribe to us. And I would really appreciate it. But for now, hope you guys have a great holiday and a safe trip to Jacksonville if you're heading over there to watch the game. But for now, have a good day.